Hey guys, so moving right along with this music mix project, I just want to do a couple of things to get myself organized before I really start doing like the heavy lifting here. So we've got everything downloaded from Canvas and uploaded into the Pro Tools session. I've got my Pro Tools session folder here, Best Kid Music Mix. I'm going to go ahead and open up the session. And this is sort of where we left off. So we've got all the things uploaded in here and imported into Pro Tools and where they need to be. The thing is, I need to work on some organizational stuff before I can really move forward with anything else. So I'm going to organize myself, and then I'm going to make use out of some other functionality in Pro Tools, maybe so I can leave myself some notes about what I'm observing about the music, and then sort of delineate where an intro part of the song is, and the verse and the chorus, and maybe a saxophone solo or something like that. So I'll show you how to do all those things, and this will be really useful for you. If you do this sort of stuff up front, it'll make the rest of the process easier. So right away you see that because I imported these recently, I've got all my tracks are selected. If I am doing that, then it's hard for me to select one in particular. So you hold the command button or control if you're on a PC, and then you click on one, and it will deselect it, and then I can click on it and then get back to single selections. Basically what I want to do here is prioritize things and then put them together by groups of instruments. So I want to have my vocals on top, maybe, just because I know that that's going to be a really important thing for me. And then I'm going to put bass and guitar there, and then drums together here, guitar or kick, overheads. So I think I might rearrange some of these things. I'll put saxophone on the bottom, and then put kick, then snare, then my toms. And I'm just clicking on the names of the tracks and sort of dragging them around. My overhead's on bottom. The next thing I want to do is to organize these things a little bit better. I'm going to color coordinate them. So vocals will be one color, and I'm just double clicking on the color panel on the left side of the track here to do that. Let's make those purple for some reason. I'm going to group like bass and guitar together. So I'm going to hold command and select both of those, and then change those to this pretty orange color. And then I'll do all the drums together. And I can, hold command or control and then click individual things. Or I can start with one and hold shift and select the last thing I want to be selected, and it'll select everything in between. So then again, maybe here I'll do some sort of greenish color. And obviously you can adjust the brightness of these things, or the saturation level. I like to have them real solid colors myself. And then let's just change the saxophone, to blue, a little brighter color. I'd also like to make a point out of making sure that I have a master track here, because right now I've got individual tracks for each element, but I need to be able to meter sort of what's going on overall. So shift command in, shift control in, or going up to track and new will get you this dialog box to add a stereo master fader. And luckily all of our elements were labeled pretty appropriately, but if I wanted to change the label on one of these, I could just double click on it. I just I'm a stickler for this stuff. I don't like master number 1. I just want master. Okay, so that's pretty cool. The next thing that I want to do is group all these things together, and I mean Pro Tools groups, so that when I adjust volume when I have a group selected, it will adjust the volume of all elements of that group in relation to each other, which is a pretty cool thing to be able to do. And I might as well make a point of saying that I'm still looking at edit view, but a lot of people prefer to look at the mixer view when they're doing these sort of mixing activities. So you can switch over there by going window or mix, or you can hit the keyboard shortcut is command equals or control equals on a PC. And that's going to look just like this. So the color coordination and the track titles and stuff are obviously the same. So that's all good. And what I want to do, I've only got one vocal, so I can just leave that alone. But let's say I'm going to put bass and guitar into a group together. So I'm going to make sure both are selected, and then hit Command or Control G to create a group. And I want to name that group. We'll call it guitars. And you see that the things that are being added to the group are the items that I had selected previously. But I could add other things. If I say I really wanted to have the vocals involved in that group, I could add it to the current group. But that's not the case. I'm going to remove it. But you can do those sorts of things. And you would also want to say, well, what do you want this group to affect? Just the editing changes that you're making, the mix changes you're making, or both? So I'm usually going with mix and edit, even though I'm likely not going to be doing much editing. I'm not going to be cutting things and stuff. I just want to make them sound better. So I hit OK, and when I do this, when I hit OK, you'll see down here in the bottom left-hand corner where it says groups, I'm going to have a new guitars group. And when that's selected, like this when it's highlighted, then when I make it some sort of volume adjustment or something, it's going to apply to both items in the group. I can hold Option and click on those, and they both go back to 0. So that's pretty cool to be able to do. But right now I'm just setting this functionality up. I'm not making use out of it. So what you want to do is make sure you deselect the group. Otherwise, I'm constantly going to be doing things to both items in the group instead of just one. But again, just making the groups. So really, I'm only going to create 2 groups. I got one for guitars. I want one for the drums, and then by default the Pro Tools gives me one that says all, and that just affects everything. Okay, so I'm going to select, hold Shift, select the rest, and Command G to make a drum group, and deselect that there. And you notice when you have the all group selected, it's even moving the master, which is maybe something that I don't want. So what I'm going to do now is create a group that's everything except for the master. So I select everything except for the master and Command G and say everything, or just maybe I'll call it no master. There. So I've got those groups all set up for me, and that can be really useful. For the next activity, I'm going to go back to the edit window. So Command or Control equals, and go back to the edit window. And at this point, I also, like I'm looking at inserts and inputs and outputs, I want to make sure that I'm looking at comments. And this is just sort of a text box where I can write certain things about each one of these particular elements. And I'm going to do that while I listen to the track. So now I'm going to start listening to the track, and I'm going to make some observations, writing some things in the comments about maybe what sort of mixing activities I want to do to these particular elements. And then at the same time, I'm going to be placing markers in my timeline here to differentiate between sections of the song. So I might zoom in a little bit closer here towards the beginning. And I keep typing in the comments box when I want to zoom in. So I'm going to start here. So here is sort of where the song begins. There's a little bit of silence at the beginning. So here's my intro. And what I do is just find the markers area in the timeline and hit the plus sign. And then my memory location, I guess they refer to it as, I'm going to call it an intro. And that's going to give me a little marker right there that I can easily click on and get to that spot. So again, just going to be listening, making observations. So here I've got sort of where the verse begins. So again, I'm going to add another marker by hitting the plus sign and saying verse 1. And then I can click and move that right into place. And I'm kind of looking at, where the saxophone begins, looking at that waveform there. nice, a little not so friendly radio F-bomb or whatever. But right here, there's sort of a tonal, there's like a change, a couple different chords, or you could just hear the difference, even if you're not musical. So I can tell that that is sort of where, the hook is going to be or whatever. So I'll call this a chorus. Chorus 1. And then, there's some things that I'm noticing are that, like, we definitely need to compress these vocals. It seems to be some heavy dynamic range in there, like from the enthusiasm in her voice or the performance or whatever, but also maybe moving away and towards the microphone a little bit. So we want to smooth out that performance and let it cut through a little bit. And also this stuff, the drums, I'm going to put this in the kicks comment, but it's meant for the whole drums. What we really need is to, pan in regards to some sort of audience perspective. And what I mean by that is that, not every single drum is going to sound like it's coming from the same spot. They're spread out from left to right a little bit. And when you are applying those sorts of changes or processing in something like Pro Tools, you want to think about this from the perspective of you were at the performance watching this. So you're looking at a stage. If a drummer hits this drum as opposed to that drum, where would those sounds likely be coming from? So that's sort of the perspective point of view. So let's scoot a little bit forward into this chorus and see where the chorus ends and goes back to a verse. I'm still stuck on the comments.
I feel this happened once before.
Alright, so there's that shift again. So we're back to, I must have missed the verse, but I'm going back to a chorus 2 here. And so at some point we get to a verse.
I feel this happened once before. There's no boxes in my door. I feel what is coming through, but where is he? Oh, where is he? Oh. I did not get your fucking later. And there's no boxes in my door.
Alright, so it's actually right here kind of where it goes back to the verse. A little bit quicker than I had expected. Alright, and let's see if there's anything else interesting to finish off this song.
I can't be. I did not get your fucking later. How did I not get your message? You're not coming home to me. I did not get your message. You're not coming home to me.
Alright, so a slightly different sort of song structure than I would normally see, but, to each their own. So I'm going to just throw this back to, verse sort of 3, and I guess that's kind of where they leave it. That's alright. So we've got this sort of indie rock band, and now we're kind of all set up. We've got, a nicely organized session here. We've got a master fader, and we've got some song structure, which will help us sort of, jump to different places where we want to, attend to specific things. In the next video, we're going to start addressing some things like, panning, EQ and dynamics compression, I think are going to be next. So make some comments for yourself and make use out of this organizational stuff, and we'll be right on track. See you next time.